So you can hear me? Can you hear me from that?
I can.
Okay, thumbs up if you can hear me.
Let's see.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, that's it. That's the new book. Thank you, everyone, for coming, for joining us. We're continuing on this morning, volume 14. We've moved very abruptly from volume 1 to volume 14 last week. Just say a couple of announcements. Next week, I see the copies of volume 1 are still here, which is good, because next week, just to confuse you all, we're going to be going back for the next 2 weeks. We're going to be going back to volume 1 to be talking about Hilchot Pesach. Okay, so that will be over the next couple of weeks. Shloshim Yom Lifnei Chag, exactly. And then the week of Pesach there won't be a shiur. So the next 2 weeks be a shiur on Hilchot Pesach. The following week there won't be a shiur, and we'll resume again after Pesach. I'll remind you of that. Don't worry. So that's will be in the announcements. Also, I was just asked to mention, as you can see, these are new volumes coming out all the time. This is volume 14 that we're studying today. Volume 15 is currently in print. If anybody's interested in sponsoring volume 15, you can speak to me privately afterwards. There are sponsorship opportunities available. I was asked to mention that, so I've mentioned it. Okay, let's begin. So last week we're in the first shiur in volume 14. We're dealing now with Hilchot Brachot, a very, very relevant, very practical halachot which come up every day. Last week we spoke about the brachot b'toch ha'seudah. So whenever you have a seudah of bread meal, and you begin with hamotzi lechem min haaretz, the halacha is, we discussed last week in depth, that the bracha of hamotzi would exempt any other food that you would eat during the meal as part of the meal. If there is food which is not normally eaten as part of the meal, so that would require its own separate bracha. The chief example of that being fruit. We mentioned the apples in honey on Rosh Hashanah, where you would say a brei pri ha'etz. So too, any sort of raw fruit, which a person may eat during the meal as part of dessert, something like that would require its own bracha. We spoke about ice cream. We spoke about cakes as well. We discussed the sugya of cooked fruit, which in the Achronim there's a bit of a discussion about. But we said nowadays, where you have cooked fruit, which is part of the meal and is quite a regular thing, that would not require a separate bracha either. And that we discussed last week. Those were some of those halachot. I'm not going to repeat now, but it's all in the book from between page 21 and 27. You can look that up. What we'll discuss today, moving on, regarding the halachot of brachot, which are said in the midst of a meal. And the question is, what happens if somebody stops or leaves in the middle of their meal? Are they then required to say a new bracha, not to say a new bracha, shinui makom, etc.? This is the sugya we're discussing today. If you open your books on page 28, on page 28, you'll see there is a heading there which says leaving in the middle of a meal, and we'll go through it. It's a little bit complex. We'll begin with the Gemara as we normally do. Begin with the Gemara, go through the Rishonim, get to the Shulchan Aruch and the contemporary poskim as well. So we'll need a little bit of patience, because there is something here which is somewhat counterintuitive in terms of the way that the sugya is phrased. But let's begin. Source number 16. This is the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim. The Gemara here talks about what happens if somebody is eating and you have a shinui makom. You change your place in the middle of eating. Again, we have to remember that in the days of Chazal, again, I've mentioned before that eating habits have changed a lot. Right? Chazal understand that when you eat, eating is not something that you do on the road. Eating is not something you do outside. When a person sits down to eat, it's a big deal. You sit down and you eat. You have a proper meal. Seudah, we think about Seudah we have on Shabbat, and on Yom Tov sometimes, with the pace of life nowadays, we just grab something to eat while you're walking, whatever. That is not the way that Chazal view it. And that is, generally speaking, when somebody sits down to eat, you sit down to eat. You're in that place, and that is the meal. There's an assumption that if a person then gets up and leaves the place from where they're eating, that is not what they did in the middle of a meal. And therefore, we get into the whole realm of, was your intention to carry on eating? Was your intention not to carry on eating? If your intention was not to carry on eating, the moment that you got up and left, then you would have to say a new bracha if you carry on eating again. That is the foundation where this all begins. So says the Gemara, source number 16, V'tu. Yativ Rav Chisda v'ka'amar mishmei denafshei. This is a continuation. The previous passage in the Gemara, Rav Chisda quoted something in the name of somebody else. So here it says Rav Chisda says in his own name. Right? Sentence, just looking at the Gemara in isolation, doesn't seem to make sense, but that is the context. So he says the following. He says, Ha de'amalt shinoi makom tzarich levarech. So the Gemara says that if you have a shinoi makom, meaning you change your place, we'll have to discuss as well. What does shinoi makom mean? Does it mean if one goes from one side of the room to another? Does it mean one goes from one room to another room or one building to a different building? We'll get to that. But he said, but there is an opinion that says when you have a shinoi makom, meaning you started eating in one place and you change your place, you go somewhere else, you would need to say a new bracha. We're going to have to understand what does it mean as well when you say a new bracha. Does that mean you have to say a bracha, an after bracha for the food you were eating in the old place, or you need to say a new bracha for the food that you'll start eating in the new place, or both? But in any event, so it says, according to what you've said, Shinoi makom tzarich levarech, says the Gemara now, two different opinions as to what that is referring to. When would we say Shinoi makom requires a bracha? So says Rav Chisda, he says, Lo amran ela b'dvarim she'en tu'unim bracha la'achrehem bimkoman, aval dvarim ha'tu'unim bracha la'achrehem bimkoman, ein tzarich levarech. Here it gets a little bit confusing because again the language here is maybe the opposite to what you might expect, but let's go through it slowly. He says that which we say that you'd be required a new bracha before you eat if you change your location, if you have a shinoi makom. He says lo amran ela b'dvarim she'en tu'unim bracha la'achrehem bimkoman. This is only required regarding things which do not need to say the after bracha in the place where you ate. But for things about dvarim ha'tu'unim bracha la'achrehem bimkoman, but where you are required to say the after bracha in the place where you ate, then you would not need to say a new bracha once you eat. Okay, so what does this mean conceptually? Essentially, he says we have two categories of food. We have two categories of bracha. There are those things, let's say, that it's the first category regards things which are more of a fixed meal. Okay, we're dealing here certainly with the bracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We'll see afterwards maybe other things as well. Probably mezonot. Right. So those things that is the category of where we say you actually aim to an in bracha la'achrehem bimkoman. You are not required to go back to the place. Sorry, other way around. Other way around. Those are things. The second category is this: things which are fixed food, where you would be required to make the bracha in the place where you ate. So the assumption is like this: if you left, you were sitting and eating, and you were eating hamotzi, you were having a fixed meal. If you left the place, since to say your after bracha, you would have to come back to where you were eating in the first place. If you left, we assume that you still want to come back, that you haven't uprooted your original sitting, and therefore, if you carried on eating, even if you're eating now somewhere else, you don't need to say a new bracha. Okay? All of it goes back to the question of, have we uprooted our original eating? So since you're required to say an after bracha in the place where you started, and you haven't done that, so you haven't shown that your meal is finished, you're still interested in eating, now you've gotten up, you've gone somewhere, you're somewhere else, we haven't reset. You don't need to say a new bracha before eating because we assume that you're going to go back. That's the second. However, if it's something which you don't need to stay in your, and again, why regarding the after bracha itself in that place or not, that's a later shiur. We'll come to that on a different day. But in terms of something which is lighter, a snack, water, fruit, not shiva minim, that's its own category, but something small like that, where we say you don't necessarily need to go back to the original place where you started to say the after bracha. Therefore, we say once you get up and leave, you've got up and left, you're finished. We assume that there is a sechadat. We assume that you're finished eating, and now when you come to the new place, you would have to say a new bracha. So this is the opinion of Rav Chisda. I'll read it again in the Gemara. I know it's a little bit confusing. He says like this.
Very confusing.
Okay. Let. So Rav Chisda says again. He says that which we say shinoi makom tzarich levarech lo amran ela b'dvarim she'en tonin bracha la'achrehem bimkoman. Again, I don't want to focus on that line now on that halacha because that's not a topic, but that's just a by the way in order to understand the concept. He says those things which do not require a bracha in their place, i.e., things which are not a fixed meal, but more of a snack. Let's put it that way. there you would need a new, if you left, you went somewhere else, you would need a new bracha, certainly before eating. However, he says, but those things where you have to go back to the first place because you have a meal, you have a seuda, you have to say Birkat Hamazon where you ate your seuda. So even if you've left, you've gone to a different room, right, and you want to have another dessert there in your other room and then come back, you would not need to say a new bracha before. That is Rav Chisda's view. And he says, just the last line in that paragraph, he says, "My tama." What's the reason? He says, "Likiva kama hada," because you've gone back to your originally established meal. So essentially, what comes out of this, Rav Chisda, is opinion number one in the Gemara. He says like this: you were sitting and you were eating a meal. You left and you came back. Okay, do you now, after you left and you came back, do you need to say a new bracha if you want to carry on eating? If it was a fixed meal, mizonot, you don't need to say a new bracha because you're carrying on your original meal. The fact that you got out and left and that you came back is immaterial, but your meal didn't end. On the other hand, if you were eating a snack, something which is shakol, you got up and you left, okay, and now you come back, you need to say shakol again. You need to say a new bracha because we don't consider that the fact that you got up and left, you uprooted the original bracha. That is the opinion of Rav Chisda.
Suppose you just forgot to bench.
What?
You're eating a meal. You got up and left. You forgot to bench.
If you're eating a meal, you got up and left, you forgot to bench.
It wasn't that your intention to come back. You just forgot.
You just forgot. Okay, so if you forgot, you need to come back and bench. But what we're discussing here, is bracha rishona, right? What happens if you want to eat more?
Right.
If you want to carry on eating. So the question is, the fact that you got up and left, the fact that you changed where you were when you come back, do we say you've now come back and you're carrying on, or do we say no, you left and now you come and you're starting something new? That's the question. When a person was eating a meal or a snack or whatever it was, they got up and left. When they come back, do we consider it that you've come back? And if you've come back, therefore, the bracha you made earlier continues, is still active, and you can carry on eating without saying anything new? Or do we say, no, it's now as if you are starting something new, and you need to start a new bracha? By the way, the bracha achorna and the bracha rishona may not be dependent on each other. They may be separate questions. We'll see in a moment.
What about a bar in the bushel? No, this is a snack. It's a snack. What?
So the bracha achorna and the bracha rishona may be different. Let's leave the brain for a moment because I'm cut enough of that. Let's just try and understand if we want to eat more, are we required to say a new bracha rishona or not? That's the question. Yes. What?
There's the shiur time between back. In other words, I can't eat breakfast, and then at lunchtime I'm going to finish. I'm going to have whatever, and then say, oh, now I'll bench for the. But not.
Yeah. There's a time limit, whatever. Okay, one thing at a time. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of things. Let's try and keep it simple. Okay. Again, we've just gone through 4 lines in the Gemara. There are a lot of different parameters here. I understand. People want to get to. People want to move forward. Let's again. What? You want to get to dinner? Okay. Let's deal with breakfast first. So again, our question is as follows. I'm sitting down to eat. While I'm sitting down, I've made my brachot before I've eaten. I'm sitting and I'm eating. At some point in the meal, for whatever reason, I get up and leave. I get up, I go to, somebody calls me from outside, I go and talk to him, I go and visit somebody, I come back, I go to the other room, for whatever reason, I remember I haven't done a mincha, whatever it can be. I come back now, and the food that I was eating before is still on the table. My question is, am I required, before I pick up a sandwich or a piece of fruit or a drink of water or anything else, am I now required to say a new bracha? I said a bracha before I started eating, but I left and I've come back. Do I need to say a new bracha before I start eating? So says Rav Chisda, it depends what you're eating. If you're eating something which is a fixed meal, which is hamotzi or mezonot, for our purposes, then no, you are not required to say a new bracha. You can carry your first bracha is still active, you can carry on. However, if it's something else, something small, shehakol, adama, whatever it is, then no, the fact that I left, I now come back, I need to say a new bracha before I carry on eating. That is Rav Chisda's opinion. Okay, so far we all good with that?
Yep.
Yes, but if you said Birkat Hamazon,
If you said Birkat Hamazon, okay, we're talking about a case where you're still in the middle of the meal. If you said Birkat Hamazon, that shows that you're finished eating, you come back, you start again, even if you haven't left. What's the classic example of this, by the way? When we say Birkat Hamazon, where we have what they kos shel bracha, right? We say Birkat Hamazon over a cup of wine. So the person who's benching, right? Don't ask me about Surat Shlishit, because that's different, because there we save the cup of wine for Haftarah. But any other time, so a person's benching, you have a cup of wine, you say Birkat Hamazon, and when you finish Birkat Hamazon, you pick up the cup of wine and you say Borei Bria Gafen. Why? Because I've now said an after bracha after everything. If I'm going to drink again, now I say a new bracha. So that's clear. But here we're talking about a case, there was no after bracha. Yes.
okay, we're at a wedding in Givat Shaul, in the large wedding halls, and you're invited to both weddings that are going on simultaneously in the same floor. And he's honored with Hamotzi
Okay.
on wedding number 1, and he's honored with Hamotzi in wedding number 2. Okay, if you've eaten in between your first meal and your second meal, but did not yet say Birkat Hamazon, this was kind of a shock that he was honored with Hamotzi at the second wedding. What are you supposed to do if you've actually eaten between the get up and leave and the come back?
Okay, hold that thought. If we haven't answered it by the end of this year, we'll come back to it. Okay, because there's a lot of different things going on here. Before we can get to that, let's just understand the basis of this, and we'll come back. But our question right now is not you want to eat in 2 different places. Okay, so again, you're eating in one place. You have your food in your dining room, and that's it. This is the only place where I'm eating. The point is, for whatever reason, in the middle of the meal, I got up and left. When I come back, do I need to say a new bracha before I carry on eating? Says Rav Chisda, it depends. If it's hamotzi, if it's a fixed meal, no. If it's a snack food, yes. Okay. Ad kan Rav Chisda. Okay. Now that we've, if that's clear, let's confuse you a little bit more. Says the next line in the Gemara, source number 16. Rav Sheshet Amar, echad zeh ve'echad zeh tzarich levarach. So says Rav Sheshet, it doesn't matter. Whatever the food was, the fact is you got up in the middle of your meal and you left. From that moment on, I now say it's as if the bracha is not active anymore because you finished, because you left. You come back, you're starting a new meal again. So the nafkamina between Rav Chisda and Rav Sheshet would be in a case where one is having a bread meal or a mezonot meal, and one is not said Birkat Hamazon, one has gotten up in the middle of the meal and left, gone somewhere else, and then they come back, they want to eat some more. According to Rav Chisda, is a new bracha of hamotzi required? No. According to Rav Sheshet, yes. That is the difference. According to everybody, so far, based on what we've learned so far, that if it was not a bread meal, if it was a snack, if it was a shakol, something like that, you got up and you left, you come back, you would be required to say say new bracha. Okay, Adkan, that is the Gemara. So what we see from this is Rav Sheshet is the one who is more machmir. Rav Sheshet says in any event, in any situation, you would be required to make a new bracha. Rav Chisda says no, not in every situation would you be required, because it depends what the bracha is, and we could still say you are continuing on your meal. Okay, so that is the machloket.
According to Rav Sheshet, you have to define what leaving means. If I get up to go to the bathroom, if I get up to borrow a cup of sugar from the neighbor, I mean, they have to define what leaving means.
Correct. According to everybody, we have to define what leaving means. That's right. Yes, yes. So first question is, many questions here. Before we define what leaving means, we also have to define again what is a shinoi makom? What is a different place? You say if I have a very long table and I'm sitting on one side of the table, I go to the other side of the table. Is that considered? If I go to the kitchen, is that considered leaving? If I leave the house, okay. So we'll discuss. But first of all, so who do we? There are a number of questions here. You can see the top of page 29. A number of questions that are raised. First of all, who do we paskin like? Do we hold like Rav Sheshet or do we hold like Rav Chisda? Okay, it won't surprise you to hear that the answer is okay. So there are those who hold like Rav Sheshet, those who hold like Rav Chisda. Let's see. So first of all, we have the Rif and the Rambam. Again, this is going to be split along Ashkenazi and Sephardi lines. Says the Rambam in source number 17 in Hilchot Brachot. He says, "Aya ochel b'bayit zeh upasak seuda v'alach lebayit acher." By the way, it's very interesting. The word bayit, which is mentioned here in the Rambam. We find it throughout Chazal. We'll see later on a bit of an argument as well. What does the word bayit mean? House. Many times in Chazal and in the Rishonim, the word bayit means a room. This may be because once upon a time, a house and a room, it was the same thing. You think today, we're in age of such a luxury and Baruch Hashem, but once upon a time, houses were very, very small. And Chazal talk about, habayit or hacheder, which is the same thing. In any event, says the Rambam here, so you were eating in one house or one room, and you stopped and you went somewhere else. You were eating and your friend called you to go out and speak with him. So therefore he went out, you went out. You went to the entrance of the house, or you left, and then you came back. Since you have changed your location, you've had a shinui makom, tzarich levarech lemafrei al ma she'achal, v'chozer u'mevarech b'tchila hamotzi, v'achar kach yigmor surato. Says the Rambam, once you've gotten up and left, you've come back, you need to say a new bracha. If you want to continue eating, you need to say a new bracha of hamotzi. So therefore, the Rambam over here, paskins like,
No. Sheshet.
Okay, let's take a Rav Sheshet, because he says that even if it was you were eating, the bracha was hamotzi. Even if it's a fixed meal, nonetheless, you got up, you come back, you always have to say a new bracha. That is the Rambam over here, the Rif as well. They paskin like Rav Sheshet. On the other hand, Tosfot and the Rosh paskin like, you can do this, Rav Chisda. Right, source number 18. Rashban says the Rosh, Rashban pasak Rav Chisda. Mishum Tatanya Kvatayu v'nirek dvarav. He says we paskin like Rav Chisda, and therefore he says this is only regarding the bracha rishona. I'm not going into right now the question of the bracha achrona, which may be separate. But he says Adam rinan shinui makom tzarich levarech haynu bracha rishona, that you need to say a new bracha rishona. So according to the Rambam, it's like Rav Sheshet, which means in any event, whatever you were eating, whatever the bracha is, you got up and left. When you come back, you have to say a new bracha. The Rosh, like the Rashbam and Tosfot, say no, we hold like Rav Chisda, and therefore if it was a fixed meal, a bread meal, you come back, you don't necessarily need to say a new bracha. We see this machloket goes through to the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. Again, it won't surprise you to see the Shulchan Aruch paskins like the Rif and the Rambam, which is generally his practice, and the Ramah is going to paskin like Tosfot and the Rosh. So you see source number 19, and again there are a lot of details here, but for now let's just try and understand based on what we've said so far. Says the Shulchan Aruch number 19, Hayaochel b'bayit zeh, top of page 30. Upasak surato v'alach l'bayit acher. A person was eating in one house, he stopped and he went somewhere else. I read that very quickly because the Rambam here is more or less the Shulchan Aruch is more or less quoting the language of the Rambam, which we've just seen. He says, he comes back to a new place. He now needs to say a bracha again before he starts eating. That is the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch, like Rav Sheshet. Says the Ramah, if you skip now, it says Haggah in the second paragraph, and then there's a paragraph after that where it says Bet. This is in the following seif. Says the Ramah in bold. There are those who argue against everything that the Shulchan Aruch has said over here. In other words, Rak sovrim sheshinoi makom eino ela kesech hadat. He says the whole concept here of shinoi makom, where a person changes the location, comes from the fact, why would a new bracha be required? Not intrinsically because of the fact that you went somewhere else, but because it means you had a hesech hadat. You in your mind, you decided you were finished eating and that your bracha is no longer active. And therefore, לכן אם שינה למקום אחר, אין צריך לברך אלא לפני מה שרוצה לאכול, אבל לא מה שאכל כבר. Okay, here he goes into the discussion about the after bracha, but regarding the new bracha as well, let's maybe skip to the next paragraph in bold. לכן מי שפסק סורתו והלך לבית אחר, somebody who stopped eating went somewhere else, או שהאוכל וקרא חברו לדבר עמו אפילו לפתח ביתו למקום אחר, or somebody called him, right, and he went to the door, and then he comes back. שחוזר לסעודה אין צריך לברך כלל, says the Rama. There is no bracha required at all. Since bread, again, this is what we started with. Since bread requires this bracha in its place, in the place where you ate, and the place where you ate is really the place where you should say Birkat HaMazon, and therefore we assume, right, without anything else, we'll see the place of intent in this afterwards as well. But we assume that if you left the place where you were eating before you said Birkat HaMazon, you know that you need to go back, and therefore you haven't finished. You're going to go back. You're still part of your meal, and therefore no new bracha is required. Okay, so essentially what we've seen till now is that there is a machloket. Starting, it's a machloket between Rav Sheshet and Rav Chisda, and then it's a machloket between the Rambam and Tosfot, and then it's the same machloket between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. According to the Shulchan Aruch, if you come back for your bread meal, you need to say a new bracha of Hamot. According to the Ramah, you do not need to say a new bracha. You can carry on. You can carry on eating. It's interesting over here that this is one of the places, one of the few places where, in fact, Rav Ovadia Yosef argues against the Shulchan Aruch. We know that Rav Ovadia, generally speaking, says that we paskin like Maran, we accept all of the rulings of the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo, but there are places where he disagrees. You can see here in the Yalkut Yosef, and this is one of those cases where also in according to the Shulchan Aruch and Rav Ovadia, and according to the Sfardi Poskim, we take very seriously the klal, the principle of what they call sabal, which is a Roshei Tevot for Safek Brachot Lehaker. Where we have a doubt regarding a bracha, where we should say or we shouldn't say, generally all other things being equal, safek brachot la'akel, we have a doubt, we will not say the bracha because we're worried, we're concerned of saying a bracha levatala, so a very serious prohibition. And therefore, the Yalkut Yosef here, you can see source number 21, he says, Mi she'atza be'emtza sudato michutz lapetach habayit, or yatza lachadar madrigot, so somebody left in the middle of the meal, they went to the stairwell, or they went out to the entrance of the house. Once they come back, they carry on eating as they were. It does not say a new bracha. So there you have the Yalkut Yosef actually paskins like the Ramah against the Shulchan Aruch. So now,
does it make a difference if you're coming back to the same place, or if you're going, in having kids here and you're going home? You're not coming back to the same place. Is it, if you don't have to say a new bracha, when you come back to the same place, you have to say a new bracha when you go to
okay, so the question was asked, are we talking about a case where somebody went back to the original location, or if you go somewhere else and you want to continue eating there? So, okay, so it's going to be more difficult, meaning there's going to be more room to suggest once you're somewhere else that you would have to say a new bracha. There we're going to get into a different sugya which regards intent, which was what did the person have in mind. So if you have a look here, the paragraph we skipped on page 30, source number 19, the paragraph we skipped in the Ramah, right? Certainly according to the Shulchan Aruch, who says that if you go back to the original place, you need to say a new bracha. So you go somewhere new, you would still need to say a new bracha. However, says the Ramah over here, says again the second paragraph on page source 19. He says, "Ayen lakaman siman reisha in gimel. Im hayad ato le'achol b'makom acher, lo mikrei shinoi makom, v'hu sheyu shnei makomot b'bayit echad v'ayen lakaman." Okay, so there, again, this is a very, very big sugya, but essentially what he says is that it depends. If a person had the da'at, if a person had intention to eat in a different place, that is not necessarily going to be called shinoi makom. Of course, it depends on certain limitations. It doesn't, can't be anyway. He says, yeah, it's within the same house, within the same building. By the way, the reference, which this is, we're now in Hilchot Brachot, but the reference which the Ramah brings is to Hilchot Kiddush on Shabbat. So it's a very, very relevant sugya. It comes up here in this very room, right, every single month. Because when we have Kiddush, the dinim of Makom Seudah, we have a difference in we have halachic ramifications in terms of saying a bracha before you eat, where you're eating, shinoi makom, as we've been discussing. There's also you have kiddush b'makom seudah. When a person makes kiddush on Friday night or on Shabbat morning, when you have to eat something, and how do we define seudah? That's beyond our scope right now. But you have to eat in the same place where you make kiddush. So you'll all immediately ask the question: wait a minute, right? How can we make kiddush up here in this room and then go down and eat in a different room? Right, that's not kiddush b'makom seudah. First of all, that's the reason why the person who's making the kiddush, if we want it to be, again, I'm not talking about, there are places in Israel it's not so common. In Chutz La'aretz it's very common where on a Friday night where the Chazan will make kiddush, There, that is a separate sugya in and of itself. There is no makom suda. The fact that Chazan is drinking without eating, that is one of the main reasons why in many places there is not the minhag. We don't make kiddush. The Gemara discussed. But so kiddush makom suda. So the way we do it here, the way that the minhag has been, is that the person making kiddush will eat as well in that room. So at least the person who's having kiddush and suda in the same place. You'll ask, what about everybody else? Everybody else heard kiddush, and even the one making kiddush intends for the suda to be in a different room. So first of all, it's different rooms which are in the same building. That is significant. And second of all, you have the intent. You have the intent that when a person says kiddush, that they intend for it to be eaten somewhere else, then that is considered as the same makom. Not everybody likes it. It's a tremendous machloket rishonim. There are rishonim who say that is not acceptable, that one needs to eat in the same place.
But we all talk from this point to that point before we eat, for a drink.
That's okay. You can talk. You can talk for you. The problem is we don't want that to be right. We don't have a hefsek between making a bracha until we start eating. That's correct. But to talk in between from going to, if you were to say the bracha here and then talk and then go and eat, that would be a problem. But it's when it says the no. I'm saying the bracha that you make on the food that you eat.
Could you have mezonot? What do you make the kiddush up here? Whoever makes.
We do.
That's what we do.
We do.
You don't see it from upstairs.
Oh. Come on down.
Mark, we need to bring a bigger piece of cake this week. Okay, so essentially that's what the Ramah tells us, that if there is certainly an opinion that says if one had intent so long as it's within the same general location, it's in the same building, and one had intent that they were going to eat there, then that's considered where I make the bracha now. It's not going to be a shinoi makom. So that's to answer your question. But again, so going back to what we said, essentially the question here, where somebody leaves in the middle of the meal, the assumption is there was not necessarily intent that one was going to do that. If at the beginning of the meal, a person sat down and said, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to make hamotzi. I know the 20 minutes into the meal, right, it's Purim, somebody's going to come visit, somebody's going to stand at the door, we're going to go and have a discussion, then I'm going to come back. Okay, that would be, then you say you had in mind anyway that you were going to go and come back, and then there's no shinei. But we're saying where it happens tam. A person is sitting in their meal, it's unexpected for whatever reason, person gets up and goes. When they come back, so we said, according to the Shulchan Aruch, you would be required to say a new bracha. According to the Ramah, you would not be required to say a new bracha because they fixed meal. According to Rav Ovadia Yosef, even the Sfardim would not be required to say a new bracha. Now, the Gemara tells us, in fact, there are some cases where, according to everybody, no new bracha would be required. Where even getting up and leaving and coming back, we still consider that it's part of the original setting. We still consider that it's part of the first meal we were having. For example, says the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim, source number 22, top of page 32. You had a group of people who came together to eat. Gemara gives an example. There was a chatan or kala. They went out to go and be sameach. So they left the meal. כשהן יוצאים, אין טוענים ברכה למפרע. כשהן חוזרים, אין טוענים ברכה לכתחילה. So here says the Gemara that you were sitting and eating at a meal. You got up and left. When you come back, you are not required to say a new bracha. במה דברים אמורים? What is the case? What are we talking about? שהניחו שם זקן או חולה. That they left behind somebody. The Gemara gives the example, somebody elderly or somebody who was sick, because that was the person who was unable to go with them. It doesn't have to be a zaken or choleh, it could be anybody. The point is that the people who were having the meal got up and everybody left the table, but somebody stayed behind at the table. So not everybody left. Then no new bracha is required. In other words, again, our question the entire time is, when you come back and sit down and carry on eating, do we say that you're starting a new meal, or do we say you're continuing the previous meal? And the chiddush over here in the Gemara is that even if you left, but you were sitting at a table with 10 people, and some of the people stayed behind, you've still got people sitting at the table, you're still eating, so you know that the meal's not over. You've got enough, but you're going to come back. We assume you're polite enough that you aren't just going to leave your guests to finish by themselves. So says the Shulchan Aruch, number 23, Chaverim, שהיו יושבים לאכול ויצאו לקראת חתן או לקראת כלה, אם הניחו שם מקצתן, חוזרים למקומם וגומרים סעודתם ואינם צריכים לברך שנייה. Right, again, this is the Shulchan Aruch. According to the Rama, for sure you would not need a new bracha, because he said, even you by yourself. But he's saying, even according to the Shulchan Aruch, if there were people sitting at the meal and they were left at the table and they stayed there, when you left, when you come back, no new bracha is required, because that is a sign that the meal is still going on. And he says significantly, right? If nobody was left there, well, then you would need a new bracha, as we've discussed. He says, and now in bold, if you were sitting and eating, not a
Drinking fruit.
right? You were drinking or you were eating fruit, etc. So that is going on the last. That is going on the last time, which is saying in the same way that if nobody was left behind, when you come back and you need to say a new bracha, that would be the same case, whether it was hamotzi or anything else. שכל המשנה מקומו הרי פסק אכילתו, ולפיכך מברך למפרע מה שאכל, וחוזר מברך שנית על מה שהוא צריך לאכול. That you would have to come back and you need to say that bracha again. Again, that is talking in a case where there is no one who is left there. The Piskei Teshuvot just points out that what we're saying, again, this chiddush according to the Shulchan Aruch, whereby, based on the Gemara, whereby if there were people left at the table, you come back, there's no new bracha required. It means people were left at the table and they were carrying on the meal, right? He says, well, what happens if?
According to this people, if I wash the smoking sport, and I go into another room upstairs, downstairs, for the cook, when I come back, I would have to wash again. I'm not leaving anyone over at the studio.
So again, if we said, we were talking around before, we said if you're we're going to talk in a moment about somebody who's traveling or somebody who's going different places. If it's all in the same, what? It's all in the same place. It's all in the same building. We said if your intention, if it's all.
The same room, it's not a problem. If my intention to come back. But some places that these ones.
Okay, so we're going to see. So we're going to see it soon. The point is, if your intention is now when I start eating, that again in the days of Chazal, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that you had this reality like this, whereby people were eating and people you're starting in one place, you're going eating somewhere else, you're going to, right? If your intention when you start washing is that I'm going to be eating, and I'm starting off eating here, and I'm going to eat there, and I'm going to eat there as well. I have all of that in mind at the beginning, so then there's one bracha that's going to cover it all. All these cases are where somebody was in one place and they left. So he says over here, for example, let's say you leave behind and you left these people behind and they were sitting there and they were eating, but then you've gone out for however long and all the people that were left behind at the table are finished. It's too long. They can't wait anymore. They've all said Birkat Hamazon and they're all going home. You come back, you've got to start again. That's what Piskei Teshuvot points out over here. Okay, and then you can see a nice summary of everything we've said on page 35. Okay, let's talk about, because obviously there's a lot to get through here. We're not going to see everything. Yeah. Yes.
The word lemafreya means before, and here it means after.
Right. So lemafreya means the word lemafreya means retroactively. Okay, I didn't focus on it so much because here it's talking about there are really two questions. When you come back, are you required to say a new bracha if you want to carry on eating? The point is, if you want to carry on eating more, do you need to say a bracha, lemafreya, i.e., an after bracha on what you'd eaten before, and a new bracha rishona on what you'll eat now moving forward? So it seems like the two are connected, may not necessarily be connected, but that's why I just wanted to focus on the bracha rishona and not on the bracha achrona. Okay. Right. So let's look on page 36. Right. We spoke a little bit about what is the shinoi makom. What do we consider to be one place to another? So the Gemara here, source number 26, it says Yativ Rav Idi Baravin Kamei Rav Chisda, Yativ Rav Chisda V'Kama Mishmei de Rav Huna. Right. So these Morim said the following. Said Had Amar Shinoi Makom Tzarich Levarech Lo Shanu Ela Mibayit Lebayit Aval Mimakom Lemakom Lo. Says the Gemara, when we say that where we have a shinoi makom, which is a new place, and it's required to say a new bracha, it's where you go from one house to another. We'll see in a moment what exactly it means here, house, as I alluded to earlier. It says, makom, it's not required. To go from one place to another is not. What do we mean when we say mimakom lemakom? So Rashi, actually, over here, it's quite lenient. Rashi says, makom lemakom, says mi bait la'aliyah. Rashi understands that going from one place to another within the same building is not actually considered a shinoi makom at all. Tosfot, however, source number 28 says, Shinoi makom, haynu afilu b'cheder bayit, kmo me'igra la'ara or mecheder l'bayit, aval mipina l'pina lo. So in other words, says Tosfot, when we say Shinoi makom, we mean from one room to another. But if it's makom lemakom, from one place to another within the same room, that would not be considered a shinoi makom. So even if you have a very large room, you have a very large wedding hall or something like that, you start off, you're going around or whatever it is. You have the food in one corner and you have the food in the other corner. That's all the same place. That's we're not getting into shinoi makom. That would start. So he said, okay. So says the Mishnah Berurah in source number 29. He says, "Labayit acher hu adin lacheder acher gam ken bichlal shinoi makomu." Right, going from one room to another. That's where we enter the sugya. So we enter the discussion. But then says the Magen Avraham the following. Have a look. Just you see the box underneath source 29. It says here we saw previously in the Ramah, which we mentioned. We saw this inside. That if one intended to move to another room when one recited the bracha, that is not considered changing locations, and one would not need to recite another bracha, even according to the Shulchan Aruch. That's where you had it in mind. So if you had it in mind that you were eating in both places, that would not be considered a shinoi makom. The Magen Avraham adds that even if you did not have it in mind, if you can still see the original location, then it's still considered the same place. So that's what we said. So this was a few different dargotim, right? If we're in the same room, a very big room, we're from one place to another, it's all considered, it's the same place. If you're in a different room, but you can still see the original place where you ate, that says the Magen Avraham, that could still be, that is still the same, that you have not changed your location. If you're in a different room and you can't see the original location where you ate, well, it depends what you had in mind when you started eating. When you said the bracha, did you have in mind that you were going to be eating somewhere else? Then there's no shinoi makom. In that case, however, you did not have it in mind. You thought, I'm only eating in this place. You go somewhere new, then it would be considered a shinoi makom. You need a new bracha. But what the Magen Avraham is telling us, that even there we did not have it in mind. If you can still see the original location, then that is still sufficient, and that would be okay. Right? Even if you see source number 31, what if I go back to my case where I did not have it in mind in the first place, right? That I'm going to be eating somewhere else. So says the Biur Halacha, source number 31. He says, okay, after ha'oi v'nachon lachush lekatchila ladat achronim, shelo likanes afilu mecheder lacheder be'emtza achilato, b'dvarim she'en tonin bracha l'achronim imkomam, im lo shaya da'ato lezeh mitchila b'shat bracha. In other words, says the Biur Halacha, it's proper, it's correct that one should look at Chila, think that one should not change places. If I did not have it in mind when I said the bracha to go into a different room, which I cannot see from the original place I started eating, I should not go there because then I may require a new bracha. He says, Mikol makom, now in bold the second paragraph, Mikol makom anoeg la'akel bazeh, en imchot beyado, yesh lo mi lismoch. Says the Biur Halacha, even in this situation, one has what to rely on, right? What do we have to rely on? Again, it's based on the opinion of Rashi and the Gemara. Ve'al kol panim b'diavad, bevadai ein atrich bracha bahen, demidei sveik al nafka, usveik brachot la'akel, that there is still a doubt here, and therefore b'diavad, one would say that one would not actually have to say bracha. Again, we'll go back to our safek. And he says, if you can see the first place, you should be no new bracha is required. So again, lechatchila, the ideal situation, the best thing to do is when one says the bracha, one should have in mind wherever one's going to eat. I'm starting upstairs and I'm going to carry on eating downstairs. I have it in mind. That is fine. Right? If I didn't have it in mind, if I'm still in the same place, or I can still see the same place, then for sure I don't need to say a new bracha when I carry on eating. Says the Biur Halacha, even more than that, if you didn't have in mind, or you had stam kavanah, right, where you weren't sure, you didn't think about the fact that you would go somewhere else, and you're now in a different room where you can't see the original one, and you're carrying on eating. So he says, b'di'evet, after the fact, you have what to rely on. Those who would not say this is not the ideal, but those who would not say new bracha, they still have got what to rely. The Shevet HaLevi just points out, number 32, that any time where a person leaves the table, you're going away for something which is related to the meal, that is not considered a shinoi makom. That we assume was part of your intention all along. So he says, Nirei lomar, im yotzei rak lemitbach, lavi od mana ma'achal, v'kayotzei bazeh, lechora lo mikra hefsek, im lo tzorech ha'seuda. He says, you leave in the middle of the meal, you go to the kitchen to bring some food, or let's say it's on Sukkot, and you're sitting and you're eating in your sukkah, which is downstairs in the parking lot, and you have to go up 5 flights of stairs to your apartment to bring something back. That's not considered that you're leaving. That's not considered a shinoi makom. Because that is for the purposes of the Suda. Yilkut Yosef over here also brings the case. When I was eating in one room, when went to eat dessert in a different room, he says no new bracha there is required. But I just wanted to mention there was something in here about eating in transit. Page 43. Right, page 43 talks about, here you have a case where somebody's eating while traveling. Says the Beit Yosef, source number 39. He says, Kmo shenagud ochei drachim sheochlim derech hilucham v'yoshvim u'mvarchim b'makom siyum achilatan. Just like you have people who are travelers, they would eat while they are walking wherever they are, and they would say the bracha of Birkat HaMazon in the place where they finished eating, not where they started. But we started off the whole shiur talking about the fact that there are certain things which are tu'unin bracha b'mkoman, that when you eat bread, you have a meal, you have to say Birkat HaMazon where you started eating. So if somebody's out and is on a tiyul or is whatever, do you have to go, you're eating along the way, do you need to go back and bench that? No. When you're a traveler and you're on the way, so we assume that's part of it, and you can say the bracha wherever you finish. Says the Shulchan Aruch in source number 14 as well. It says, Imach pat b'makom echad v'chazar v'achal b'makom acher. One started eating in one place, then ate in another place. So you only say Birkat HaMazon where you finished eating. And this is similar to the case of Ochei Drachim, as we said before. And it's pointed out that the Halacha Boran, source number 42, says that when one is walking around, or when one is in transit, or one is on a tiyul, whatever it may be, this Halacha that you can carry on eating based on the original bracha, that would apply not just to bread, but that would apply to whatever you're eating, whatever food.
We eat falafel on the street.
Yes.
Where do you bench?
What do you mean? You're sitting down somewhere and eating?
No.
You're walking.
You're walking around.
Okay, so Chazal weren't so happy about people walking around eating while they were walking. But you should find a place to sit. Wherever you finish eating, you should find a place to sit down and bench. So just to summarize, because we've been through a lot. Again, there are more details here. People are welcome to take the book and to go through and look through and come back with questions if you have. But there's actually a nice summary at the end on page 49. Just goes through a summary of the main halachot, what we've seen, the main things that we've seen, just to try and tie it all together, so that I don't leave you all confused again. We started off saying like this. We're dealing with the idea of shinoi makom. We're dealing with the idea of shinoi makom while one is eating and one is starting a meal. If the assumption is, and again, 2 different types of cases, we'll divide it into 2. There is one where one starts off, at least, sitting and eating and having a fixed meal in one location, versus where one is walking around and traveling, whatever it may be. Let's actually start with the second one, because that's easier. We just touched on it briefly the last few moments. If one is walking around, if one is traveling, one is on a train, one is on a tiyul, whatever it may be, and one intends, and one knows I'm eating on the road, so one had that intent that they were eating on the road, they say the bracha where they begin and they eat, and they say the bracha achrona when they finished eating. That's it. If in the normal situation whereby one is eating in a fixed place, one is sitting and having a meal. So we said again, 2 different cases. One case where one leaves and eats somewhere else, one case where one leaves and comes back. So one is sitting and eating. One leaves and comes back to where they started eating. Are we now required to say a new bracha? Do we say that the fact that you left and got up in the middle uproots your original bracha? Now you need to start eating, you need to start saying a bracha again if you want to carry on eating. So we saw there was a machloket in the Gemara between Rav Chisda and Rav Sheshet. It was a machloket in the Rishonim, and it was a machloket in the Achronim between the Shulchan Aruch and the Rama. According to the Shulchan Aruch, when one comes, if one is left, as soon as you come back, you're required to say a new bracha. According to the Rama, it was a motzi, it was a fixed meal. You come back, your original bracha still stands, and you can carry on eating. Even according to the Shulchan Aruch, if one left, but there was an indication that one was coming back, i.e. there were other people at the meal, there was an indication that the meal has not concluded, that it's still going on, when you come back, you would not have to say a new bracha there either. We also mentioned that Rav Ovadia even says that even for Sfardim, one would not say a new bracha. If I want to go and eat somewhere else, so when I started eating, if I had the intent that when I said the bracha, that I'm now going to eat, and I know that I'm here at this wedding, and I'm having the first course in this room, and I'm having the main course in that room, and I had that in mind when I washed it, when I said the bracha. That's not a shinoi makom. That one can continue eating, and that would be fine. If I didn't have it in mind, so if I'm in the same room, it's the same room the entire time that I can see, it's not a shinoi makom. If I'm even in a different room, but I can see the original place where I started eating, it's still considered the same place, not a shinoi makom. The Halacha said even more than that. Even if you didn't have kavanah, he said, but there is what to rely on. But ideally, one should avoid getting into that situation where one didn't have in mind and where it's a different place, and then eating again. That was what the Halacha said. Okay, we'll stop for today. That concludes the halachot of brachot during a meal and changing locations. For now, as I said, next week everybody's invited to come back for Hilchot Pesach. We'll be in volume 1 again. So we'll have those books here, and we'll get through as much as we can over the next 2 weeks, and then we'll take a break for Pesach.
Okay, thank you.
So Rabbi,